Among the means of beginning discussion, and it involves to some degree the same principle of listen and probe, is to find out that person's religiosity. You ask the person, are you religious? Are you a practicing whatever? What are your views on your own religion? And you may find, depending on the people that you're meeting, whether they're professionals or whatever, that for a lot of people, religion is not really playing a major part in their lives. They don't really hardly even believe in it. It is more the culture. This is a culture that we live. And this is an element of the culture. I don't necessarily believe this stuff or, worship these things or whatever. But, I go along with it because that is the culture. For example, Christmas. If you ask the average Westerner about Christmas and what Christmas actually means, most of them don't really believe it. It's just a festival which happens, and it's a time for celebration, giving presents and things. So people are involved in it, though they actually don't really believe in it. So by asking people, about their religious conviction, how strongly they believe, you can use this as a means for beginning Dawa. Another way is to ask people about their own religious practices. Certain religious practices. There are elements within their religion. You ask them to tell you about it. Showing some interest to know what their beliefs are regarding that particular idol or symbol or whatever. What does this actually mean? Why do you wear it? Or why do you put it over your door? Or why do you, whatever. Let them tell you something. So this helps to kind of break the ice, and, and perhaps you'll find them asking you, well, okay, I've told you about that, but will you tell me, why do you guys do this thing? Why do you have this? And why do you all... So that will, that kind of exchange is a good environment also for presenting Islam. A general question, which is also good for beginning Dawa, is to ask people the purpose of their creation. Why are you here? What is the purpose of our lives? Why, this is a question that everybody asks himself or herself sometime in their life. Why? Why was I created? What is the purpose of life? And for a lot of people, they have no answer. They have no idea. They may have thought about it at different points in time, but they never found an answer. So, for you to be able to provide a clear answer from Islam for them, this is also very enlightening, so they can see some of the good qualities of Islam, where some of the key and critical issues are clearly dealt with. They're not confused and, dubious as they tend to be in many of the other religions. Another way is to discuss Islam in the presence of others. For example, you're taking a train ride to Bangalore from here. It's many hours. So what you do is you agree with your friend, you and somebody else are traveling together, or friends. You sit in an area where you sit amongst non-Muslims, and then you start a discussion amongst yourselves, right? Where non-Muslims can hear what you're talking about without you directing anything to them, right? You understand? So you start to talk about some basic ideas of Islam, as if you don't really know, one of you doesn't really know, you want some clarity or whatever, and the other one is explaining, and you might discuss it or whatever, and the others around They are just hearing, right? So it's passive, but you're getting the information across, you know. And this is similar to leaving, for example, in your office. For example, say you're a doctor. You have people coming into your office. You have a reception area where people keep magazines and things. Here in that area, you can leave some Islamic pamphlets or whatever there, you know, that people out of their own curiosity might pick up and have a look at. You know, it's similar to that, right? It's passive. You're not aggressively trying to promote, you know, religion, because the method of people like the Jehovah's Witness and the Mormons, where they go knocking on people's doors, you know, like aggressive salesmen, you know, this is not really, Islam doesn't encourage this, you know. If the opportunity presents itself, you present the message and you leave it up to people. You don't try to force it down their throats. So, I mean, those are the major points that are in your notes. Actually, after that, when you look inside the notes, inshallah, when they get into your hands, you'll find over 80 different ways to make da'wah, you know, which are listed one after another in the notes, right? That's from page 63 through to page 70 of your notes once you get it in your hands. So that, as I said, represents the main tips that I would like to suggest. There are other symbols, as I said, where people might wear certain symbols, you know, like the tali and things like this that people wear. Muslims are wearing it too, and they shouldn't be. You know, you can ask about these for people to explain to you what was behind them, what was the root, you know, the explanation as a means of introducing Islam to them. So now, if you want to, we'll open this session up here now, because this is the whole issue of tips for da'wah. I've given some 7 or 8 general points, but reality is that you have to be conscious, so that whenever the opportunity presents itself, you're there. You can take advantage of that opportunity. You know, you just have to, what you'll find is that where you're conscious about da'wah and you feel this responsibility and you carry with you, means you're going to carry with you certain material. Actually, in the Emirates or in Qatar, when we do this course, we have a da'wah briefcase, right? A da'wah briefcase which the participants also get. It has different sections with material, tapes and booklets in all of the various languages of the people who are found, you know, non-Muslims who are found in Qatar. See, so for yourself, meaning that as you travel around the society, whatever you should have in your briefcase or whatever, in the languages of the people, certain basic materials that if a discussion comes up, you know, you have a brief encounter with somebody, you can give them something to follow up, because maybe you'll never see them again, but you've put something in their hands that they can follow up with. So it's what it is, you know, basically looking for what we call triggers, something which triggers an opportunity, you know, and to be able to catch that opportunity whenever it presents itself. And that will vary from person to person, from circumstance to circumstance. There's so many, you really can't, you know, list them per se. So now we'll just go into, as I said, open discussion where you may raise some circumstances. How could I do it in this circumstance? What could I possibly do when this happens, or whatsoever? So now it's for you to raise whatever issues you'd like to raise regarding the da'wah. Before going on to our other questions, let's deal with ones related to beginning da'wah. How can we establish or get conversation going, or to make da'wah in this circumstance? Each of you is in a different circumstance, or maybe you have some common circumstances. It's now for you to ask, how am I going to do da'wah in this circumstance? What circumstance are you in? Where do you work? Do you work, or are you going to school? Huh? You finished your education. So what are you doing? You're working? You're in search of work. Okay, so in search of work meaning that you are going in for job interviews and all these kinds of things, right? So this is now, in your job interview situation, you're going to be running into different non-Muslims. So now how do you make da'wah in this situation? How do you start da'wah? See, because I'm saying, you look to your particular situation. What can you do? Right now you're not doing anything, right? You're just going in, filling out papers, handing it in. Now think, what can you do? What is it possible for you to do in that circumstance?
When you are coming up from the interview, we can give any pamphlets of Islam to them.
Okay, this is brother's suggestion. When you finish the interview, you can give them a pamphlet. But I would say that given the fact that most people going to interviews, they try to neutralize their Islam as much as possible, meaning they're going to shave their beard, they're going to wear regular Western clothes and come in looking like, anybody but a Muslim. I think that you would think that if I were to give him a pamphlet, that would just seal my situation. Definitely I'm not going to get the job, So although theoretically it sounds nice, practically speaking, we have to look at ourselves. What do we do when we go out there looking for jobs? So I would say first and foremost that we have to believe ultimately that provision, rizq, is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to believe that sincerely in our hearts, so that when we go out, we don't have to try to hide our Islam. We're honest. Because it's really hypocrisy, isn't it? And deception when you come in clean shaven and dressed like a non-Muslim, you could say, in that sense. You've tried to hide your Islam, presenting yourself in this way, making sure you don't say anything, no inshallah, or make sure that doesn't even come out of your mouth. No. Why? You are a Muslim. You're a Muslim. If somebody doesn't want to hire you because you're a Muslim, and of course being a Muslim doesn't mean you're aggressive with your Islam, I mean you're trying to push it down people's throat, beat them to death with it, no. But you are who you are. And you should be proud of who you are in the sense that you're not afraid to let people know who you are, without wearing a big badge on your shoulder or on your t-shirt saying, I'm a Muslim. I'm saying not necessary to go all that way, right? But the point is that in your being sincere, being real, that can have an impact on the person who's trying to hire you that your hiding will not. And when you get into a job coming in as a pseudo, right? A pseudo whatever, then you're coming on a weak footing. You will forever be like that. You will never have the strength to say, well, really I am, right? You'll never grow your beard. You'll never, conform with any of the Islamic requirements. So I would say that in general, you just coming in as who you are, being honest, people will respect you for being honest. And that can be, in your own actions, your da'wah. Without necessarily having to give a pamphlet or so on, so on, so on. I would say that if in the course of the interview, or at the end of the interview, you have a chance to just talk, general talk, and you do find that trigger, that opportunity to say something, of course, then you should have your pamphlet with you, that in leaving you can leave something with you.
The positive points I would like to put for myself looking for the job is that I would be punctual, because Islam says if you are punctual and if you're supposed to work 8 hours a day, and if I come in late, I am not eligible for that 1 hour of work. And these kind of things, you can say that the good qualities of Islam, the human rights and everything. So you can end up your interview just summarizing a few points and thus showing how what Islam is. Probably he will be impressed and this kind of things.
That's a good point also. When you're being asked about how you would handle situations, what type of character you are, that you can link it to Islam. As Muslims, we are told to do this, or Allah has instructed us, God has instructed us that we should be this, so this is what I try to be. I try to do this, etc., etc. Yeah, sure. That's a very good point. Well, let's see from the sisters, would you have any suggestions for sisters who are coming into job interviews, etc., situations? What would you give as a suggestion, as a tip for dawah in such a circumstance?
Saying words like mashallah, inshallah in the conversation.
Yeah, but I would...
God willing.
Yeah, using it in the language that they understand.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. That would be good too. Okay.
My tips?
Okay, go ahead. Hold on, you had something else? Go
Not
ahead.
compromising on the hijab if they ask us to do so.
Right.
Explaining why it is so important for for mu'mina.
True. And very important to point out to them, that one of the ways that we used to explain the issue of hijab, even if we're talking about hijab from the perspective, not necessarily of niqab, but from the perspective of a khimar, right? A woman wearing the scarf, at least covering her hair and etc. That when you are asking a woman, a Muslim woman, to take off her hijab, that this would be equivalent to asking a modest Christian or Hindu woman to take off her blouse. Put it in a context that they could understand, how would you feel if somebody asked you to take your blouse off? Of course, it's something you say, no, this is immodest, So in the same way, when you're asking a Muslim woman to take off, and it is a practicing Muslim woman, because they might say, well, okay, there's some Muslim women don't even cover their hair. Well, I say, yes, and there's some women, other women, Christian and Hindus, who wear bikinis and expose themselves too. Right? You wouldn't do it, okay, but some others do. But those who are trying to be modest and to follow the religion, they cover themselves, and this is part of modesty in Islam.
And also starting with Assalamu alaikum.
Well, if we're talking to a Muslim, we would begin with Assalamu alaikum. If we're not, we use their own greetings, hi, how are you, something pleasant.
Tell them same point, you can tell them that since we are Muslim women wearing hijab, there will be less distraction from the men to get distracted while they're working, and normally when a normal woman works with fashionable clothes while a mixed group is there, generally that men tend to abuse orally or visually. Here the chance is much less because they know what we are and we're not going to bend anywhere.
Yeah, this is if you get into a deep discussion and you're going now to debate about the benefits and pluses and minuses of veiling. But I think for a normal interview, we wouldn't be able to get that deep. Okay, anyway, we'll take the last point here actually, because we're supposed to end up now. We have Salatul Jum'ah coming up. Actually, this young man had a question to ask before you, or a point to make.
Shall I add my question or tips?
You have a choice. Either give you a tip or give you a question, because we have to stop now.
Inshallah, I will ask the question. Once I was in discussion with doing Dawa to my non-Muslim. He was Jain. Regarding the question he raised was, why can't you do this to Osama bin Laden? Like that.
Why can't you do what?
Why can't Muslims do Dawa or Islam to such a person? They are Muslims. Even if we say that they are out of faith or out of misconception, they are committing that, they are voluntarily advising us to do Dawa to them, so that their terrorism will be avoided.
Okay.
Such type of question.
So you say that if I got the opportunity, I would. Finish. And I'm sure there are people who, have tried to give also advice, in writing or publicly in recorded lectures, etc. The advice has been given. But you just explained to them that some people can take advice and other people can't? Okay, so we'll stop here now for Salatul Jummah, and we will return. What time are we scheduled to start back? Salatul Jummah is 1:30. So should we start back by 2 o'clock? Huh? Huh? Oh, Jummah is 1:30. It's going to, is it, what time is Jummah actually? Huh? Jummah is what time? Huh? The khutbah is at 1 o'clock. All right, I see, yes. 1 o'clock, and it's finished by what? 1:30? No, I'm not. No. Until 1:30. Huh? No, no. No. Huh? Well, it was announced by mistake. Anyway, the point is that we can't ask normally, can we? Anyway, we'll try to start back. If it's finished by 1:30, then we should try to start back by 1:45. If it goes on to, because what about your lunch too, right? I guess you want lunch too, huh? Uh-huh. Okay, I guess we'll have to say by 2:30 we start back. Or 2:15? Okay, 2:15. Huh? We'll be back here for 2:15 inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on the last messenger of Allah. We finished in the last section tips for Dawa. Actually, we didn't examine that many circumstances. We really only looked at a few. Perhaps we may take a couple more before going into our next section, which is basically the practical section for the general issues of Dawa. So before doing that, let me take from you some couple other circumstances where you would like to know how would we begin Dawa in this circumstance, or how would we engage somebody in Dawa in this circumstance. Alaikum salam.
Actually, I'm not an Indian, but I want to tell what I observed to Indian brother. I have been in Hyderabad. Unfortunately, a Muslim, an Indian Muslim, his ambition, his goal, target to see, when you will ask him, he will tell you, I wanted to see the Hindus, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punishing him in hellfire. This is their ambition. How they will make da'wah if they are desire this? And unfortunately, has been also there. And he'll tell you, when we'll ask the Hindus, please accept Islam. Islam is like that. Jibril, what you are telling about? And instead, you want me to become Baha'i, Gangist? See the Muslims, what they are doing. And I don't know, actually, the verses, whether it is correct or not. Zakir wrote a book telling Islah and the Da'wah. Islah means conveying the Islam to non-Muslim, to Muslim, and the Da'wah for non-Muslim. And better to concentrate in that topic, that is Islah for Muslims. I don't know whether it is correct or not, the verses. Thank you.
Yeah.
And instead, we used to tell them we are Arab, we know the Islam. Islam is not telling like that, but they are telling us no. What we are observing these things from the Muslims. And the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we know clearly the ayah, خُذِ الْعَفْوَ وَأَمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. Jazakallah khair.
Actually, what we're asking for here, now brother, you brought another situation. What we're asking for circumstances where people want to know how to begin da'wah. As we started in the last session. You had something? This is not asking questions now. I mean, if you have a da'wah circumstance, because this is part of our section on tips for da'wah. So you're looking at, there's some circumstance you'd like to get a tip. What would be my advice to help you in your dawah? You have something like that? Come please.
This is an incident which took place about 2 years back. Like I'm a member of a particular organization which holds a convention every once in 2 years. So in this convention, our mentor, he gives a lot of speeches, and there was a question on spirituality. The mentor is a Hindu, but he always speaks against Hinduism. So likewise, he was speaking against Islam many a times. Like at that time, I never had the knowledge to confront him. Last year, when he had told certain verses from the Quran, which was incomplete, then I confronted him in the question and answer session. So he was avoiding me somehow because he felt there was something going to be wrong. So 2 or 3 particular questions he asked me, why do Muslims have 4 wives and all this? So at that time I told him the same reason as you told him, that it was better for a man to have a responsibility. And secondly, what happened when he misquoted the Quran, so he told me to challenge and prove that the Quran, what he is saying is correct and what I am saying is wrong. So I had taken some copies of some 10 copies from 2 versions, 2 translations of the Quran. But when I gave it to him as a challenge, he was not accepting that. In front of the whole people, about say 400 to 500, he declared that if what I prove to him, that he would become a Muslim. And when I did that, and he refuted his charge, saying that the versions of the Quran which I presented to him was a false version of it, and then he will not accept. So in those circumstances, when a person says he will accept when I produce the truth to him, and then when the truth is produced to him, he doesn't accept and he gets very highly if he gets highly temperamental, in that situation, what can a person do?
Well, this is really not what we're looking for, brother. But I mean, your job, as we said before, is to convey the message. If you have conveyed the message, you have produced the evidence, and the person doesn't want to accept the evidence, what can you do? Nothing. What more can you do? You have produced the evidence, they don't accept it, then fine. You have to go on, seek others. So this is not what I'm looking for. Like I gave the example of a brother and where he was working, or he wasn't working, he was going to seek jobs. So we look to see how can he make dawah in that circumstance. This is what I'm looking for here now. And somebody else have a circumstance? Okay, brother, go ahead.
I teach in a college. So how would I go about making dawah to my students?
You teach in a college?
Yes.
Is this a college of mixed students?
It's a college of computer science.
Okay.
Information technology.
Computer science. And the students in your class are a mixture?
50 Muslims, 50% Muslims, 50% Hindus.
Okay. So have you attempted to make any dawah in that circumstance?
Normally in the class we don't talk about Islam, but I teach them good character, You should not talk too much, things like that. You should not speak lies. These kinds of things I tell them in class. And on one occasion I have attempted to give dawah because my student, he was planning to drop out of college. So then somehow he sat along with me and he was waiting and waiting and waiting. I don't know for what. So I told him a bit about Islam and he had some questions. That was the only occasion on which I told anyone about Islam.
Okay.
And of course there are other occasions also. Some of the Muslims wanted to know my feelings about Islam. So some 2 or 3 students, then I told them about it, yes. They were more towards Tabligh. So I told them that I don't like Tabligh because it's not the way of the Prophet. Something like that.
All right. In your circumstance, as a teacher there, teaching computers, what you could do is to take some of the computer programs which are Islamic programs, because in the course of teaching you will bring some samples from different sources, right? You're explaining a program, how it works or whatever. So as an example, normally you're bringing standard ones that are on the market. Well, there are Islamic programs on the market also. So I would suggest to you, since that's your area, you should try to gather, all of the Islamic computer programs that are available, commercially, so that in the course of your class, as you're giving examples, you give them some from different sources. So as though you're explaining a function, the program you're using is an Islamic program. So they will inadvertently be exposed to some of the information. That's what I would suggest in your class.
Can I ask a question, brother?
Oh yes, go ahead, sister.
I have two situations. The first situation is, how do you start dawah to your neighbors who are non-Muslims and who are not usually at home since they are working? And the second situation is, how do you do dawah to the Tablighi Jamaat people?
No, your first situation, how to give dawah to neighbors, who are not usually home. I mean, that's very vague. You need to specify those neighbors. Do you have a relationship with them?
No, we don't.
Well, you see, that's where you have to start. You would have to develop a relationship with them. You'd have to, develop some kind of a relationship whereby, they visit you, you visit them, something like this. And then you get to know them, they get to know you, and in the course of getting to know them, then you can find what is the avenue through which you can enter. Because otherwise, if they're at a distance, you're at a distance, how can you take anything to them? How can you get across to them? In terms of Jamaat Tabligh, my advice would just basically be to focus on people coming back to the Quran and the Sunnah, exposing them to material either written or audio visual or lectures, whatever, wherein focus is there on the Quran and the Sunnah, to have them exposed as much to that as possible, to understand the sources of Islam, to read the Quran with commentary, to understand the Quran. In the course of, like Ibn Kathir, where in explaining the Quran, hadiths are used, so they get exposed more to hadiths in understanding Quran, as opposed to the traditional just rote memorization of Quran. Another brother?
One day I was just reading a book, The Right Path, and my mom asked me, why are you reading this book? I said, it tells about backbiting, slander and all that. Then after 1 week or something, I and my friend went and gave one book to this ma'am. Then she read that book and she really liked that book, and she said that, why don't you bring more editions? It's a magazine, monthly magazine. And I gave her the book. And I still give her books. Like last week I gave her 2 books. Then I don't know what kind of book to give to her, in which she will ask me questions, or where I can just speak to her, because she is not my teacher. She was just for a week or something, that's it. Like how to proceed with the dawah. She's a ma'am of science teacher.
Okay, one, I would say that as long as she is already interested enough to ask you for materials, then you continue to provide her materials. When she's ready to start asking questions, she will ask. You see, part of the problem in our da'wah is we become too anxious, over anxious. We want to build Rome in a day. We have to be patient. Give her a chance to continue to read. When she's ready, for sure, she'll get back to you. The other thing is that since she's in science, her area is science, then the Quran and modern science would be a good booklet or book to give her. They have, there's a nice production where they've explained about Islam, as well as brought issues about the Quran and science. It's called, what is it called? A Brief Illustrated Guide to Islam. This is a very nice one, if you can get that and give it to her. Or the Quran and Modern Science, a booklet. I edited a copy of it by Maurice Bukai. This is good also. So since that is her inclination, then you get that kind of information for her. Okay, go ahead. Or from the sisters, and if the sister has a Dawa circumstance she'd like to get some tips on.
Yes, I have a similar situation like the sisters just now said. But my neighbor, she's an avid follower of the Sai Baba. And every time there's a Christian, the Christmas, they sing bhajans where praising Jesus Christ. And during Ramadan or Eid, they praise Allahu Akbar. They bring it into their bhajans. And they sort of invited us over. But I had a valid reason saying that I'm working, I'm sorry, I can't come. But how do you start?
Well, in the case of Sai Baba, actually there is a lot of literature out there which exposes, his fraud. So I would just try to gather that, and somehow slip it across to them, to let them be exposed to some other understandings. But with his claim is that he is an avatar, right? He is a God man. So that's what you have to deal with ultimately with them is, who is God? Who is Allah? Who is God, really? Does God become a human being or not? And this kind of thing. So my Dawa area would focus on who is God, There's a good bit of literature available. There's a book I did called Did God Become Man? A booklet. It's also being circulated here, free distribution. Perhaps you can pass it on to her or whatever as a means of reflecting on this concept, because that's where the problem lies. Go ahead.
How to approach to Hindus and Christians, and specifically when we are traveling in a train. We had an experience while coming to Peace Exhibition from Mumbai. We were in the train and there were Hindus, Christians both together in the same compartment. So how do we deal with them like they're sitting together with us?
Well, I gave you the example before that you carry on a conversation about God. The idea of, is it possible for God to do anything? And what does that mean? Does it mean he could become a man? This is the issue that you discuss amongst yourselves. It will address both problems. We're going to come to that particular question in itself. How do you handle that argument? Since God is able to do anything, couldn't he become a man? Couldn't he have a son? These kinds of issues. So you just carry on a discussion between the two of you, where you're discussing this point. Not looking at the others whilst you're discussing it, but really as if you're genuinely having a conversation between the two of you. From the sisters?
How can I do Dawa in an email group?
In a?
Email group.
Email group?
Yeah. Or my classmates.
Well, it
have
depends.
A group of group. When you send a mail, everybody in the group will get that mail. My old classmates. So, what kind of articles can I send?
Well, what is being circulated right now in the group?
Now only birthday wishes and like that.
Birthday wishes. Well, I think that maybe if you can try to send some material which is either scientific things, amazing things, or you can say, send an email to them saying, that there was this amazing thing that you found out, about, for example, one of the scientific miracles of the Quran, that you thought it was quite interesting and you wanted to share it with others. You can maybe put a small note in like that, and presenting it as something that you've just recently come across and which caught your attention. And otherwise, any other because together you all studied evolution, right? You must have studied in school. You're talking about schoolmates, non-Muslims, right?
Yeah.
So you must have studied Darwin's theory of evolution in school, no?
Yes.
You did. So you have Harun Yahya's site on the internet, where you can again mention that you've come across some evidence which refutes, what we used to study about evolution. We always used to study that this thing was fact and truth and etc., etc. But I've come across a site which has a whole bunch of evidence against it. So give them the link, the direct link, the URL that will take them into Harun Yahya's refutation of evolution.
There are some scholars who say Harun Yahya's book is not,
No, we know his book. There's problems in some elements in his book, at the end of his books, some of his books. Not the main presentation, his main refutation of Darwinism is still sound. Where he has a problem is where he adds at the end of his books his special interpretation of matter and everything being Allah and all that kind of foolishness, right? That is at the end of his books. Like Evolution Deceit, which I see here, at the very end, the last chapter, he has some kind of a warning that what you're going to read is something that is going to change your whole understanding, and it's in that section. But the main argument about evolution is still sound. So to direct them to that, to at least as a means of introducing them to another point of view and perhaps their curiosity to look in other parts of his website, inshallah, I think this is a useful tool.
Is it ideal to do Dawa to opposite sex? My batchmates, girls, as well as sometimes madams.
Well, we talked about that earlier, whether it's possible to give Dawa to somebody of the opposite sex. We said that if we do so, if the circumstance arises, we do so as basic information, and of course you do so in circumstances where you don't end up, being alone, in the classroom or in the office or something like this. You don't put yourself in the circumstances which the Prophet ﷺ forbade, right? But just giving them basic information if they've asked you about it, or directing them to basic information, there's no harm in doing that. And if they're interested in wanting to follow up, then you put them in touch with some females who can follow up with them. Go ahead.
Sister's chance.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, brother, I have a non-Muslim friend. I usually speak to her about Islam, but she says I don't want to listen because I have a lot of commitments towards my parents. There's no way I can come into Islam. But if sometimes I really force her, she says, okay, I'll listen, but I won't come into Islam. So in what way should I explain to her?
Well, as long as she's listening, as I told you before, her saying I will not come into Islam, that is, how she feels right now. If she hears enough information and becomes convinced, then she can change her mind. So don't worry about her saying, I'll not come into Islam. Just, if she is willing to listen, even if you have to put a bit of pressure on her to listen, and she does listen, then you continue to feed her information. Try to find the areas which interest her the most, what she's attracted to the most, and then you focus on those areas. Perhaps what's even good is, if she has reached a stage where you have given her all the basic information and she has enough really to make the choice, but she is reluctant because of her fear for her family, then you introduce her to one of the Muslim sisters who is a convert from her background. And then you let her carry on. Let her get to know her, and then she can ask her the kind of questions that she needs answered, which you can't answer.
I was just traveling in a train, and I met, in a compartment there were two army people. And they were returning from from the border of Kashmir. And I was just sitting over there and was going for a Army Medical College interview. And regarding this, we were talking about army, and he became little, he don't know that I am a Muslim, and he thought I'm a non-Muslim and started speaking regarding what the things goes wrong in the Kashmir. And he started speaking how they violate not like this case. He was just explaining in a very funny manner that how they kill the Muslims, it's something. And I just kept on listening, and I just kept quiet. And they told me regarding all the different kind of torturing for the women and the men. Later on, without disclosing my information, I was sitting there. Later he came to know that I'm a Muslim. So we didn't talk for a long time. But after that, I just tell him that, see, even you take Ram as your God. So he fought so many wars. To say...
Brother, please, we want to keep it short. You're asking for a tip for Dawa.
No, I'm telling about a circumstance. Huh? I'm telling him what I told. Is it right or wrong that quoting about the Hindu gods to explaining them towards justice first and later them towards Islam? Is it right, or I'm falling into the trap again?
Okay, that's it. Just try to get to the point, when you're raising the issues. The idea of taking examples from their own books, etc., is quite legitimate. It is okay to do that, to clarify a point that you want to make from Islam of what is justice, or what is, what does God do, etc., etc. Yes. From the sisters?
Alhamdulillah, there is a woman who has accepted Islam just 2 hours back, and she prayed the Jummah prayer with us, and I would like you to advise us how to behave with her, and how much should we tell her to do what next.
Well, actually, her case was brought to me after the program, as to what to do since we had Jummah, and I said to those people who asked me that she should take part in the prayer, because this is the first thing that is required of her, that she needs to establish the prayers. Because what it means now, you have to teach her the prayers, because now she just imitated what you were doing. She needs to learn it. So it means somebody or bodies have to commit themselves to be her mentors, who will be with her and help her until she learns all of the basics, what to do, whether it's Islamic hygiene or whether it is the actual prayers that are involved, introduce her to fasting, and all the various requirements, Islamic requirements, that somebody has to stay with her, bodies have to stay with her until she establishes herself, and introduce her around to the various different sisters, and include her in your gatherings, and let her feel at home, as a person who accepts Islam, has joined the brotherhood and the sisterhood of Islam, and she should be made to feel that practically.
And she was questioning me that she has a daughter, her name is Ganga, and a son-in-law who lives with her. What to do about them? She was questioning me. I didn't know how to answer her, like whether to come out of the house, or she needs some personal advice. Maybe she could come and meet you or something.
Okay, we could arrange, some from family circumstance to speak to her, inshallah. But anyway.
Coming out of the house, what do you advise?
I don't understand about coming out of the house.
Like to practice Islam, might be she will not be allowed to do that in her house. She doesn't have a husband. She lives with her daughter, and the son-in-law.
No, excuse me. She's got two daughters. One is a Muslim.
Pardon?
That lady has got two daughters.
Uh-huh.
One is a Muslim and the other one is a Hindu. She can always come and stay with the Muslim daughter. She's got place there.
Yeah. Yes. Her Muslim daughter is a convert to Islam?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
then she should move in. Should be advised to move in with her Muslim daughter. You know, because that would be an environment, inshallah, which would help her to practice and to grow in Islam. But then again, you know, still, women of her age group, it's important for women of her own age group also to make a special effort to make her feel welcome and to help to teach her, because again, still, you know, learning from her daughter who is younger than her, sometimes it becomes a problem. You know, she may want to learn, but older people learning from younger people oftentimes have difficulty. You know, this is psychological. So you should make sure that people of her own age group, you know, she be introduced into such a circle where she's dealing with older women, you know, who can then help her, and she won't feel so shy to ask questions and to get the knowledge that she needs. Okay, we'll take one more and then we'll carry on to our practical.
How to start up and what's the message to convey to the people of laborers?
Pardon?
Laborers, what's the message we have to convey and how to start with them? The people who are working in small scales.
Laborers?
Laborers, yeah.
Well, you know, again, this depends.
Especially the uneducated people.
Yeah, as I said, this depends on the circumstance. You know, you can't identify a specific topic or statement that you need to give to a laborer. You know, there's no such thing. What we did identify already is that whatever you present, it should be on a level which is suitable for them, right? Having not gone into higher education, a simple way, it is presented a simple way. But it is going to depend on the circumstance. If it's a laborer who is doing a job in your home, for example, you have some job which needs to be done, so that has brought him into your home circumstance. So in that circumstance, you try to develop some kind of relationship. You offer him water to drink, you know, kindness. You show them kindness, and in the course of it, you use any of the tips that we said earlier to try to get them into some conversation, and from there you get an idea of what their thinking is, and then you try to give them what is appropriate.
In a situation where we have to make dawah to our non-Muslim friends or neighbors, can we start the topic saying that it is a Muslim's duty towards conveying the message of Islam to you, or something like that? Can we start off with that?
You could, but I mean, I don't know what purpose it would serve. I mean, we're going to say something like that. That should be in response to something. You know, if somebody asked you, well, why are you so keen to explain Islam to me? Well, that would be my answer. You know, it is the duty of Muslims to, but just to start off my conversation with you, it is the duty of Muslims to explain Islam to others, and that's why I'm going to be explaining Islam to you. Yeah, you know, it's a kind of stiff. It's not a very friendly and sociable kind of way. So I wouldn't use it as a beginning statement.
Okay, actually I've got two circumstances. One, we participate in international leather fairs. International Leather Fair. It's a 3-day conference, and we have somewhere about 900 guests coming into our stall for 3 days. It's a golden opportunity, but we get only about 1 or 2 minutes of interaction with all of them. They are from intelligent people from all across the globe. So how can I use the opportunity to give some kind of a message, probably some verse or ayah, the display? What? How can I use this opportunity?
Well, I would say what I would do is that I would try to have some leather works, because you're displaying your product, right?
Okay.
Some leather works where Islamic art, for example, has come into it. You frame it, you have it up. People may be attracted to it. They ask you, well, what is that or whatever. That's your opening to explain, okay, this is actually a verse from Quran which says so and so, something of that nature, you know. The other thing is that you could just have in your stall a stand, you know, with a brochure about, which just says, you know, take one, please take one for free or whatever. And then whoever is interested, or what do you know about Islam, or, some other title, whatever, if you want to find something more neutral. And then people are just encouraged to take if they wish or not if they don't. You just have something passively accessible to them.
Okay, and the second one, it's a software company where about 300 people work. And the top of the management says religion is something to be practiced at home. Don't bring it to the office. How do we handle this? Religion, keep it at home. Don't bring it to office.
Okay. But what is your office circumstance?
It's 90% non-Muslims. 90 to 95% non-Muslims. It's a software company.
Yeah, and I mean, what is your office circumstance? Are you a senior where people are coming through and talking to you on a regular basis, etc.?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so what you can have, for example, is some books like 10 Ways to Increase Your Wealth. Right? You have it on your table, since that is what is going to attract people's attention. There's a book by Yasser Qadi, which is called 10 Ways to Increase Your Wealth. 15 ways? Okay, 15 ways to increase your wealth. You have something like that on your table, I haven't published it yet, but there's a book that based on a lecture which I've given a number of times called The 7 Habits of Truly Successful People. So at least you have the tape maybe available, have it nice, sitting in a nice cover, The 7 Habits of Truly Successful People. They might catch their interest, and they pick it up. So you without keeping a religious cover, you have it under. And also, we have done in Qatar a series of postcards, right? They're postcards of different scenes from Qatar, which are attractive scenes, But on the back of it, it has, a place where you can write your address and whatever information. But then it has in one corner one of the scientific miracles in the Quran, which is related to the picture on the front. So, you can gift it, as a postcard, whatever. And then there is this information there. If they want to read, it catches them. You understand what I'm saying? So you're doing it indirectly. All right? Okay. We're going to go on now. In any case, it's the women's turn. If you open it up to come back to you, it will be their turn. So we need to, not to say I want to stop the women from giving anything, but we need to carry on now. Huh?